Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of this stained glass inspired Seed of Life drawing on Ampersand Encasuticbord. So in part 1 we drew all the geometry that you can see on the panel, and we're now going to start adding colour, which is my favourite bit. So just before we start launching into the colour work, I just want to point something out, and we just need to do something before we start. So when we drew our geometry, we had a vertical line through the middle, and we always have to start geometry with a line and a point. So this is unavoidable. But what we don't want is the vertical line going through what would be our glass panes or the petals, because pencil work is translucent, so it will pick up the graphite and it will make the colours look muddy, and this is especially so in the centre circle or the central petals where we're going to use lighter colours. So we want to just get rid of this line that's running through this section. Now you can see I've already done it on these. I was just making sure that the eraser I was using was going to work. So I did have a little bit of a play before we started just to check that, and the eraser that I found is the best one was actually this one, the Derwent pencil eraser. So it's a pencil with a little brush on the end, and the nice thing about this is you've got a lovely point to erase with. So I've already erased these ones down here, so I'm just going to go back over them. So I'm now just going to take out this one up here. And then this bit up here. Just use this helpful brush at the end to brush all the rubbings off. Now I might just want to have another go with that. I did try a Tombow mono eraser, but that didn't really work on this at all, which was surprising, but you know, not every eraser works on every surface nicely. Sort of smudged it really. So we just want to remove as much of the graphite as we can really. Now I appreciate we've got graphite in all of our leading, all of our line work, but I'm not too worried about that because we will be using dark colours in the leading, so we won't see the graphite once we start to merge in the colours, but we will see it in these lighter areas. Now I've also gone and picked out some colours. So I'm using Derwent Coloursoft today. I would suggest for this stage of the drawing that you use a soft pencil. So Coloursoft, the name really gives it away. They've got a very soft core, beautiful for blending. You could also use Prismacolor Premier soft core, Luminance, Caran d'Ache Luminance pencils. I mean, those would be my top choices. Also Derwent Lightfast as well, they're quite soft. So you want a pencil that's got a soft core because we want to be blending and laying down colour pretty quickly. We will later move on to pencils with a much harder core for the blending, and I'll explain that a bit later. In terms of colours, you could use whatever colours you like. I have decided to go for a spectrum of colours, so I'm just going to move these into shot a minute. And I pair them, so I have a light tone and a mid to dark tone, lighter tone, mid to dark tone. So you can see they're kind of in pairs of colours. That's how I'm going to work in this piece. You can obviously do more colours if you want to. You could have 3 or 4 colours, but what we're aiming for is an ombre effect. So by that I mean from light to dark, one colour to another. So you're looking for colours that have a nice transition between them. And maybe in later videos I'll talk a little bit more about how I choose those. But I really want you just to have fun with this piece and, you know, not worry too much about copying what I'm doing. I will tell you what colours I've used when we get to each section, just to give you an idea. So I think we'll get started. So I'm starting with, so I said Derwent Coloursoft, Cream 010 and Lemon Yellow 030. So it's a light yellowy creamy colour and then a sort of mid-tone yellow really. And that's what we're going to add into our central petals. So I'm just going to move these pencils out of the way, give myself a bit of space. I've also got a piece of kitchen roll which I sometimes lean on, and you'll see me leaning on it when we get a bit further along because it protects what's underneath and from smudging. So we're going to start with our lightest colour, and we're going to start in the centre, in these 6 petals in the middle, so the very beginning of our seed of life. Now when we start, we want to just be careful with picking up too much graphite along these edges, especially in these very light colours. Now I'm hoping that you've used like a H pencil, so it won't be, you won't be picking up too much graphite, whereas I used a darker graphite pencil so you can see more clearly what I'm doing. So just be a bit aware of what you're touching up against. You want to be right up to the edge but not pull that graphite in because it will make the colours muddy. So we're going to start to add some colour. Now one of the lovely things about this board is that you can work pretty quickly, and I'm really just using a circular motion to get the colour in really fast. And I really like this about using this board because pencil can be a very slow medium, which is lovely and meditative, but you might be quite short on time or like to work a bit faster than that. So this is really good for that. You can see I'm just sort of working over, just filling in as much of the grain as I can. I'm just going to grab my brush here and just brush off any pigment. So now I'm going to take my darker colour, the darker yellow, and start to introduce it in the top of this petal. And we're looking for an ombre effect, so we want it to be darker right at the point and sort of fading in to the creamy colour around halfway down. Now I might work back in now with my cream just to start merging those colours together. And it will become even more blended when we add our harder pencil later. Now these pencils do produce a little bit of dust because they are so soft. That's what makes them really lovely to blend with. So there we go, that's one petal done. So we're going to work around now. So I encourage you to turn the board so that your hand is comfortable while you're working. You don't want to be uncomfortable. And notice I'm going up to the edge of the graphite, but I'm trying not to put it into the cream colour. Over to the yellow. So slightly harder pressure at the tip and then sort of fading down here. So I'm releasing my pressure as I head down. I do tend to lay colour down in sort of elliptical motions. That's what I find most natural to me. But with this surface, you could go linear if you want. The pigment really seems to sort of fill the grain of the surface, and you don't see a lot of the strokes that you've put down on this, which is where it's very different to working on paper with pencil, where you have to be so careful what strokes you're using. So again, harder at the top. And I should say, when I'm laying that cream colour down, I'm sort of doing a medium pressure really. We use that lighter colour just to blend the colours together. So this is where it's quite important to choose colours that do have a graduation between them, because it makes this process much easier. Do tend to usually start lighter in the centre, like the light is bursting out of the centre. That's just a preference I have, but you could start with whichever colours you like really. You just want to bear in mind that light colour and then mid to darker tone with the sort of graduation of colour. So at this stage you probably wouldn't want to go blue to green. You know, we're sort of keeping in the same colour group within our petal. Or blue to red, I should say, you know, something that's quite different. You know, you could do that, you would get a nice blend, but we're just keeping things simple on this tutorial. We're just starting out. We'll move on to more complicated colour blends later on, but we're going to just build up our kind of colour knowledge and skill set really. And also I personally really enjoy keeping things simple. We live very complicated lives these days, and I just find it really nice for my brain to have a little rest and do something that's isn't too complicated, and you know, don't have to think too much about, enough that it allows me to switch off and not think about anything else, but you know, it doesn't feel stressful to me that I'm trying to work things out too much. So last one now. Now bear in mind, this is just our first layer. We are going to come back and blend this more later on. We're just getting our foundations down really. But you can see that we're already off to a really good start. We've got some nice coverage going on here. You'll notice I'm brushing the pigment away, it just to help me see a little bit better what I've done. There we go. So I'm going to stop there with that one now, and we're going to move on to the next layer. So now on to our next round of colour. I'm using pale orange 060 and blood orange 090, so a sort of light, well, it's really a mid-tone pale sort of orange and then a much darker orange. So again, we're going light to dark. So I'm just going to twist the board just a little bit. So we're going to start adding the colour again. Always sort of start from the inside to out. I just find that works for me. You will find your way, and that is absolutely fine. Do what works for you. And like I say, you'll notice I'm twisting the board a lot. It's because I'm trying to do it whatever feels most comfortable to my hand. Now the pressure I'm using here is sort of light to mid really. I am quite light touch. I don't have a particularly heavy hand, so my pressure tends to be light to medium, and even when I'm really going for it, I'm probably not really going for it that much or that hard really. I'm still probably a mid pressure. So we're going to start to introduce this red here now, blood orange. We're going to go a bit tentatively because actually this is quite a darker red, or sort of orangey red. Now I'm really going light pressure here. I'm just tickling the page, the panel really just very lightly. Now we want this top edge to be darker, so I'm just sort of do it darker up here and then feather it in. This can take just a little bit of patience to sort of feather it in. Now we want to go back to our paler colour and start to introduce it back into the bottom, making this bit darker. Then we're going to come up into where our blood orange was and blend it in. And you can see that really helps to start to blend the colours. And that's what's lovely about working with a softer pencil at this stage. You can really push and pull the pigment about to give a nice ombre effect, that graduation of colour from one to another. Now I'm looking at this and I can see just want a little bit more darkness across this top edge. I'm even going to just draw that line in a little bit. And remember, we're going to do the leading as well, so you know, if your line isn't super perfect, just don't worry about it. Again, I'm using that elliptical technique just to fade the colours in. So let's move on to the next one now. Just going to brush any dust off here. I really recommend you get a dusting brush. This one's actually got bamboo fibres in it, so it's really soft, and I find that works really well. So again, we're going to start in this bottom section here, light pressure, elliptical strokes. I'm actually just going to show you what I'm doing. This is the motion I'm doing. It does help to have a sharp point with doing this, but you'll notice that my pencils are getting blunt and I'm not sharpening them, I'm just going with it. As long as I've got the position to get into the corners, I don't worry too much on this particular style of work. So again, we're going to go into this top layer, or this top edge I should say, very lightly. We're just really light pressure, as light as you can go really. We're just kissing or feathering the panel. So this is a really good exercise in learning how to control your pressure. Now we want to just fade into here. I do get a lot of satisfaction from doing this, but I do want to remind you all that I've been drawing and using this technique for a very long time, so I may be making it look easy. Don't get disheartened if you're finding this hard. It is just practice, and you can still get some really beautiful effects even if you're not managing the smooth graduation as you'd like. And we're trying to suggest glass, but you know, this isn't stained glass. This isn't a realistic drawing of stained glass. It's just a flavour of it. We're just inspired by. So again, it doesn't have to be exactly like what stained glass would look like. Really, this light to dark gives the suggestion of light, and that's what I'm trying to suggest with this style of drawing, is that suggestion of light coming through panels. But as I say, it's not a realistic drawing of a stained glass window. We're just using it as inspiration. So don't get too hung up about that. I really just want you to enjoy this and relax into it, because really for me art is for enjoyment and the process, and that's what I really want you to encourage for yourself, that you enjoy the process and it's not about the outcome, it's about enjoying what you're doing. Okay, so on to the next panel. Again, starting in the centre. I'm just going to move that a little bit because I was doing it a little bit of a funny angle. I wasn't very comfortable. Also, with these geometry pieces, especially like this, you could have it horizontal or vertical. You know, you could hang it like that or like that. It's really your preference, what you prefer. And I really like that. These have got radial symmetry, so they're the same whichever way you look at them. So, you know, you can choose what you like the best, which again is really lovely. So again, in with that darker colour, the blood orange, really feather it. And this is really key to getting that graduation really. You don't want to go in too dark, too heavy. Sorry, too dark, too early. You want the capacity to be able to build up the colour, you know, and then you're in complete control of what's happening. This surface really grips the pigment. I just really love this surface actually, the Encasuticbord for pencil work. It really grips the pigment. But you can see it keeps a little bit of the original texture of the surface, which I also really love. You know, I like to have the history of the piece, the character of the surface you're working on. I'm just going to darken that to white. Now remember, we can go back if we think a bit later on this isn't dark enough, we want to change it, we can absolutely do that. And you'll see later on that I start to make those decisions once we're a bit further through the piece and I get a feel for how the colours are looking and what the balance is. Just wanted to add a little bit more in there. You see I jump around as well. I'll notice something in another panel and think, oh yeah, just fix that. Okay. And also, once you know this geometry, you could do this same piece again and again, but change the colours, see what different effects you get. You know, start dark in the middle, go to light. That will look very different. You could do every single panel a different colour, different graduation. You could use 3 colours, although I must admit in these smaller petals using 3 colours is quite difficult. You haven't got a lot of space to work within, so I find 2 colours in these smaller petals or shapes are kind of enough really. You don't have a lot of space to pull lots of colours in, but once you get to these bigger panels you could have 3 colours. You know, you could really go to town. You could also do pattern work within each panel. I mean, stained glass, when you look at stained glass sheets, the glass isn't uniform, so it can have stripes in and different variations, and you know, I might have a go at that in a future tutorial because I think that will be a lot of fun. You know, so I'm just showing you an ombre effect today, which is one that I like to work with a lot. I use it a lot in my work, but we'll do some experimenting later on and see what other effects we can get. Did a naughty there, I just blew the dust away, which I try not to encourage you to do because you don't want any spittle coming out by mistake and then you've got a little wet patch on your piece. I mean, it would dry and it would be fine, but it's always best to use a brush really. So yeah, don't follow my bad example. I was doing very well up until then. Going in with the red. You might be wondering about this stained glass fascination, the inspiration. I've always really loved stained glass since I was a little girl. I like really modern abstract stained glass. I can remember my grandmother getting a Tiffany lamp and I was absolutely fascinated with it. I studied a little bit of Tiffany glass when I was doing my art GCSE, and I just love the sort of very leading shapes. You know, I like that style. It's only really recently I've started trying to create that in colour pencil, which, you know, colour pencil is my main medium. It's what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years. So I sort of suddenly thought, I wonder if I could join those two things that I really like together. So you're really seeing me at the beginning of this journey and working in this style in terms of this sort of stained glass inspired, and I hope you'll join me for a while on that. Yeah, I just find stained glass fascinating, how the light comes through. Yeah, so I hope, you know, I'm going to keep on this journey and see what I can learn and what styles I can develop by combining those sort of my huge interest in stained glass and the patterns and how the light comes through the glass and the leading and the shapes and things with the medium that I often work with, also with geometry, which I think stained glass lends itself so beautifully to geometry because you can create all the leading and the geometry has an aesthetic that we find appealing. I went a tiny little bit dark there in that corner. It doesn't matter, it will disappear in a minute. Lost my concentration for a second, I think. Again, dark at the top, fading in, using your pressure. Just going to turn that around here because I just want to get that edge there. If you're left-handed, you'll be working the opposite way to me. You will have worked anti-clockwise instead of clockwise. Again, absolutely fine. Please do you. Okay, so that we've gone all the way around now. I will probably come back in later and fade this a little bit more. I will show you that if I do it, but just for now I'm going to stop with this round and we'll move on to the next. So continuing on with the next part of our piece, we're going to go to the next petals out. I'm using, again, Coloursoft Pink C190, mine's very short, and Bright Pink C200. And what I'm going to do, I think now, is show you this petal, then you'll go round with the same style. This sort of shell shape, we'll do that one, then we'll go round, and then this section. So I'm going to show you this, this and this, and then rather than film the whole lot round, which will take a long time and you'll probably get fed up, I'll go away and finish all of that and we'll come back again after that and start all the leading. So let's get going. So starting with our pink, just going to use my kitchen roll again. I think I'll do this one, and maybe this one. So it's all the same technique, starting with our lighter colour, elliptical. Now I'm having told this pencil is slightly different because it's a bit shorter. Filling it all in, nice light pressure. Just doing that very first layer nice and lightly. brushing off the pigment, then to our darker pink. So starting in that top point. Now with the same technique as we did in the petal just before, we want to do a nice light pressure to begin with, so we're in complete control of what's happening. Keep this bit darker, and you'll see I'm sort of working back and forth really. These are just our first layers again, so as I said earlier, we've got room to darken things up later, change the graduation a little bit. Everything is flexible and adaptable. We just want to get our foundation layers in really. I'm just going to go back in with this darker. Again, I can't keep emphasising enough how much this very light pressure is really key here for the control and to get that really beautiful graduation and that kind of feathering. Sort of not, I suppose it's like dabbing at the panel, but I'm giving the illusion of the graduation by not being uniform everywhere, I think would be the best way to describe it. Here I'm sort of dabbing and it's a bit like dotting really, but not quite. I'm doing it in an elliptical motion. Really with this, I really encourage you to just have a go and find your own way, because your hand, how you see, how you feel will be different to me. So find your way, use me and how I'm doing it as your guidance, but find your own way. There we go. I'm quite happy with that as it is. So we're going to move on to one of these shell type petals. And remember, you're going to have to do this in every petal around. I've decided not to film that because I'm going to do exactly the same as what I've just done. So I will go away and do that, but I just want to give you each style so that you can carry on as well. So picking up our next colours, I've gone for Bright Lilac 260 as my light colour and Bright Purple 240 as my dark colour. So starting with our light. Now I might have to move this panel about a little bit here because this is quite a big shape actually now. So as we work further out, our sections get bigger and they take longer to do, which is partly why I've decided not to film absolutely everything, because it is all the same all the way around. It would make for a very, very, very long video. So again, elliptical motion, light pressure, just feathering the page. And because these pencils are soft, they give up their pigment nice and easily, which means that you can go in with a really light pressure and still get quite a decent layer of pigment down. So that's our first layer in. Now when I come in, when our point is really, really sharp, it's lovely, but it can work a little bit against us because you can end up going in a little bit harder than you want to sometimes. So just be careful if you're working with a really sharp point like I am, that you keep your pressure nice and light. You'll be fed up of me going on about having light pressure. Like I say, do not worry if that is not your style. You don't naturally work with a light pressure. You will find a way to make this work for your hand. you know, please own it. This is your artwork, so do what feels good to you. I really believe that's so important. So I'm feathering again down into the centre. So you want to keep this lovely arch. I really like shell shapes, so I really like this shape. Just going to add a little bit more up here. Okay, I'm just going to brush away the pigment, because sometimes it can look like you've done more than you've actually done. And because the sort of crumbly bits of pigment are disguising. You can see already that this blending highlights some of the dark. And patience is quite key with these effects, to layer and feather in the pigment. That's why I like working on this surface actually, because this is much quicker to do on Encasuticbord, and also pastel board as well. This is really quick. I'll show you that in another video. So I wouldn't consider myself to be that patient really, but because this speeds me up a little bit, I find my patience extends to this. I'm sure you'll have a lot more patience than I have. Okay, so let's mix this in again. I just want to turn this for a second just so I can get this nice arch. I just want to get that nice smooth top edge in. Again, it's really light pressure I'm using while I'm doing this, but I'm just feathering it in short little bursts. I'm not sort of putting my point down and going like that. I'm literally just feathering it. And again, that is a little bit of a practice thing, I think. I wasn't very good at that for quite a long time. It's just because I've practiced now. So I'm probably going to leave that one there now and work all the rest again. So like I said, I'm just going to work this one particular shape, and then we're going to work all the way around in the final piece. But I just want to show you these sections. So moving on to these sections now, I've got quite a big space to fill here. I'm going to use Mint 470 and Sea Green 380. I realise the font's very shiny, so how easy that is to see I'm not sure, but I will write all of this in the description as well. So these, we're getting into the realms of my favourite colours now, the bluey greens. So I've decided to go bluey green around the outside because quite frankly I can't help myself, as it's my favourite colour. So I've chosen this section here, which I must admit I do feel a bit daunted by. It's quite a big section. I like working small, to be honest, in these little sections. Probably because my focus isn't for very long, so I like these. I can just do these. So let's have a go at this. So it's all the same technique. We need to firstly fill it in our lighter colour. So this is going to take a little while. I can only apologise. Now you can see, like I was saying earlier, I'm working with quite a sharp point here. So I'm actually just going to sort of get some colour down quick just to take the real pointy bit off my point there. Just so I've got a little bit more control in here. Just going to turn it. So I want to get this edge quite... It's actually quite a strong strong minty green actually. This is definitely going to pack some punch. So I'm still working in that elliptical like this. This is how I'm working. Like I said earlier, you could be working linear like this. I'll show you. It doesn't really make a lot of difference on this surface. Because we're using such a light pressure, it doesn't really show the marks we're using. So again, it's completely your preference how your hand likes to work. When we come into the edge here, which is always a bit difficult when we're at an edge, you can end up getting quite a strong. I'm just going to come in this way just to give me a bit more control. And these boards do have a slightly beveled edge where the surface layer has a bit of a lip, so I'm just running the edge of the pencil along there a little bit just so it's not super white. And I'm just going to fill this in a little bit more. There we are. So let's be brave now. We're going to go in with our darker colour. No need to be scared, everybody. So let's start over here, and again, just really light pressure if you can. Got quite a sharp point on this, so I'm just trying to. I'm actually going to turn this way for this, and I encourage you to move the panel to work for you because I was struggling a little bit there. So really light pressure we want to do. Now it's up to you how far down you bring the ombre effect, but just bear in mind that these panels are quite small. So these ones might end up just being this mint green. So if you imagine a circle coming round here with the line of this edge, we're sort of looking at this level. You know, if we wanted to introduce the sea green into these panels, we need to be working quite far down, and I think aesthetically that probably won't look right. So I'm probably gonna only come about maybe halfway, if that. So let's just see, we'll get a feel. It doesn't have to be the same on every panel either. You could experiment with using, you know, different distances here. Not every glass panel is the same in stained glass. They are all individual, so you have the opportunity to do that as well. Yeah, so this feels like a good height to me. You may feel differently. You can go further up, or not come down as far, or go further down. It's completely up to you. But this feels good to me. So I'm just going to add. So generally with pencil, the way that you get darker or more saturated colour is to add more layers in that section. That is still true in this. Sometimes I might use a bit more pressure up here. I'm not at the moment. I'm just darkening it by adding more layers. You can see I'm working quite quickly, really. It's probably a confidence thing, to be honest. So you work as fast or as slow as you like. So I just want to have a look now at how this is blending. So I'm going to start down here. Just add a little bit more colour down here. So again, we're starting to saturate this colour, so that's why it starts to look brighter, or you could say darker, but it's just because we're adding another layer which adds more pigment. So I'm using this lighter pencil to blend, and we're going to come back to this technique later because we're going to do this with some harder chord watercolour pencils to really push this pigment about and make it look more blended, but this is sort of the start of that really. So I'm wobbling about all over the place with the panel, but it's just because I move the panel around a lot. Just going to turn it this way. So I'm just going to, because I'm going to be leaning on where we've been drawing, I'm just putting the kitchen roll there just to protect it, because we can end up smudging it, and we do have oils on our hands that can affect the colour pencil a little bit, especially if we're hot. So yeah, I do encourage you to lean on something while you're working. It could be drafting film as well, or tracing paper, or just something. I like leaning on kitchen roll, but tissue. Just be mindful though of picking up any bits of pigment underneath. I've done that a few times and ended up with a bit of a smudgy mark, but yeah, just be mindful of that. I'm actually going to turn it upside down just for a second, because I just want to look at it from another angle. So that's a really good thing to do as well. Let's just keep looking at it from different angles. Because remember, so we're sort of working at the top of the piece, but actually from this way it's at the bottom. So, remember that radial symmetry on this piece. It works from any direction, so you sort of keep that in mind. I actually quite like the fade on this. At this stage, do not worry that the piece is quite grainy. We will rectify some of that later on with our harder chord pencils. So there we are, that's this panel done. So remember, these are just the foundational layers. We just want to now we want to work all the way around. So you get your pink layer in, the purples layer in, and then the greeny blue layers in. And then we'll come back and do all of the black leading. So all of our lines that we haven't worked in, we will come back and do after we've got all of our foundation colours in. So I hope you enjoy working all of the rest of the piece, all the panels, and I'll see you back here for the next stage.